I'd be honored to be considered, and Mr. Trump will make those decisions. The whole team is working well together. Reince Priebus is exceedingly talented, in my opinion. He can talk to 3 people on 3 phones at the same time, which is a good quality for a chief of staff. He knows everybody, and he's got good judgment. Steve Bannon is a powerful intellect and a thoughtful leader that consistently provides good advice, and so it's a good team right now.
And joining that team is the man who was speaking there in Trump Towers yesterday, Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions, who is Mr. Trump's pick as our next Attorney General, pending his confirmation by his colleagues in the United States Senate. Welcome back to America Talks Live. We invite your calls at 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. Our panelists today from Newsmax New York, Sam Nunberg. From Washington, D.C. via Skype, Tom Rogan. We'll get back to them to discuss the Sessions selection. But first, on the telephone, a guy from the place I used to represent, Arizona, Peoria, Arizona. Terry is on the line. Terry, tell me, how is this transition playing in the Peoria of the Southwest?
Well, J.D., it seems to be playing well. We're very quiet here, as you probably know. But my disappointment is in the clown prince, who wants cooperation from Donald Trump in the transition, but he refuses to call off his demonstrators. He tells them to march on. Now, where is the equity in that, I would like to know, if he wants Trump to cooperate with him?
Well, I made the comment about that last night on Newsmax Prime. Understand that Mr. Obama, his first job on his resume was, quote, community organizer. That's a polite way to say street agitator. And the fact is, he has never abandoned that Alinskyite approach, always taking to the streets, always seeking to make political change through public division. And while he is very clever and very articulate and can read a teleprompter better than most guys in network television, the fact is he is first, last, and always a street agitator. Henceforth, I believe Barack Hussein Obama will be remembered as our first agitator-in-chief. Thanks very much for the call, Terry. Let's discuss not only what Terry had to say, but this Jeff Sessions appointment. And again, from Newsmax New York, we've got Sam Nunberg, and from Washington, D.C., Tom Rogan. Tom, let me go to you first on Jeff Sessions, a man of the Senate, but a guy who is headed for the courts, had not an Alabama senator, a Democrat by the name of Hal Heflin, blocked his appointment as a federal judge. Your take on Jefferson Beauregard Sessions as the next Attorney General, Tom?
Yeah, I think it's a good pick. He is someone who is respected across the Senate. Apologize. He's also someone who has a close and long-standing relationship with Mr. Trump. So it was, I think, quite inevitable that he was going to get a senior level cabinet position. But I think it'll be a good thing. I think that he will be able to fill that role with that legal experience, but also the understanding on the part of other senators, which obviously becomes important for the confirmation process, that he is someone that he will be a stable hand at the Department of Justice, and perhaps guided away from some of the more politicized elements that sadly have come to define that department under this current administration.
Sam Nunberg, Senator Sessions is the very picture of comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y, in the Senate. I've been a participant in hearings for the Senate Judiciary Committee, where he has chaired a couple of the proceedings, and despite his tough stance, he is able to project a rather conciliatory pitch or tone with his Senate colleagues. There has been some intimation, in stark contrast to what Tom assesses. There's been some concern that some in the Senate may actually try to challenge his nomination. What are you hearing?
Well, he's going to be supported by all the Republicans, and the good news is that Chairman Grassley of the Judiciary Committee has already come out in support of him. Now, obviously, they're going to want to, on the left, and the Democrats are going to want to. He's a big threat to them. He's going to destroy the legacy of Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch, because, as you know, the role of the Attorney General is to be the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. And unlike his predecessors, he actually believes in law enforcement. And I do think that this is somewhat of a threat, obviously, to Obama and his legacy. And he's going to face, he's going to be hit up by MSNBC. He's going to be hit by the New York Times. But at the end of the day, he's going to get confirmed, and he's going to do an excellent job. And what we really do need is we're going to come back to a law and order administration, and he represents that. And I'm happy President-elect Trump made him the nominee, because there was a lot of talk about possibly others trying to get this position, including Chris Christie. And I've never seen somebody who fights corruption and has been, he wasn't even challenged for re-election. He's going to be an excellent pick. He's going to be an excellent attorney general, and he hit a home run here.
And it is very interesting with two of the three picks, one a member of Congress, the other a United States senator, especially for the confirmation project. The logic would be that the Senate would be reluctant to turn on one of its own. Now, I made mention of this earlier. And well, before I get to that, let me get to the here and now, Tom, in terms of what Jeff Sessions brings, not only an overall law and order profile, but especially when it comes to existing law on immigration, which, quite frankly, not only the two attorneys general under President Obama, but quite frankly, attorneys general starting from Bush 1 through Clinton through Bush 2, it was almost as if our government decided, we're really not going to enforce immigration law. Jeff Sessions, it seems to me, Tom, is a guy who says, no, we're going to enforce the laws on the books. Is that your interpretation?
Yes, it is. But I also think his appointment in that regard has another benefit, in the sense that, as we've discussed, this is a collegial guy. He is someone who people warm to because of his character. That matters as the Trump administration begins to address, I think, sanctuary cities would be the first step, because of that narrative that the left will put out in terms of media trying to shift public opinion. If you have someone who seems reasonable, who articulates clear points of view, and who is decisive in trying to carry them through, I think the American people will get behind that, because he's ticking those various boxes. He'll be likable, but he'll also be able to push through those tougher elements that previously have been have made controversial by sort of agitators on the left.
I mentioned earlier that it was very curious. He was appointed to become a federal judge pending Senate confirmation. The old line Alabama Democrat Hal Heflin stepped in and blocked Jeff Sessions' appointment as a federal judge. So Jeff Sessions decided to go into elective politics, became the Attorney General of Alabama, and then upon Hal Heflin's retirement from the Senate, ended up winning that seat as the Alabama Republican nominee. So despite his courtliness, Sam Nunberg, he is a tough guy who found his revenge, if you will, by saying, okay, you're going to block the bench to me. I'm going to end up becoming a member of the club who decides those very questions. There is a steel spine underneath the Magnolia accent of Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, and I would also just want to give one other note, is that I've dealt with his staff throughout the years, and people like Stephen Miller, who became President-elect Trump's speechwriter and worked on his messaging, or Rick Dearborn, who's now one of the main players in the transition staff, are exemplary, and they've done a tremendous job. And what you see is they're extremely professional, and I've known the other people that have worked for him, and I'm sure that he's going to make the right kind of appointments. But yeah, that's part of the American success story. He had a major setback, and in his last re-election, he even ran unopposed. And he's become a national figure, and he's helped redefine. I will tell you that when I worked on the Trump campaign early, he helped us on our policy initiatives and where to go with how to attack the establishment. And he's really stood for a lot of policy positions that were very difficult for him, but he's done it, as we've been saying, in an affable way, and he's never been seen as somebody that's been hard to work with.
That is the key, is it not? After all is said and done, especially at this tempestuous time in American history, perhaps it is Senator, or we should say Attorney General designate Sessions, who offers an example of how to disagree without being disagreeable. Gentlemen, just one final note here. Vice President-elect Mike Pence speaking with reporters in Trump Tower earlier today about the transition progress. Get a quick listen to Mike here.
Our agency teams have begun to arrive at agencies in Washington, D.C. this morning. We're beginning what we're very confident will be a smooth transition that will serve to move this country forward and make America great again.
So there is the Vice President, as the former talk show host he was, getting that slogan in, Make America Great Again. Tom Rogan in Washington, Sam Nunberg in New York, you have helped make this broadcast great today. We appreciate your time. When we come back, Dan Gaynor of the Media Research Center, man, is the left going nuts.